All right, people. So I'm assuming that you say you've got like you went you used the bathroom, you got something to eat. It's like, and now you're here for the second half of the of my top 20, which is like yes. And unfortunately, as I realized between the recording of these two parts, is that I realized that I can't count. This first half was only 20 through 12. And so this next half is going to be 11 through 1, as stated on the site right there. So, but what does that mean? That means that, I made a big deal about omitting Alan Moore's run on Swamp Thing from the list. Well, guess what, people? It's back on the list at number 11. Because, like, not only is this like regarded as one of the most transformative runs on a comic book in history, in the sense that Alan Moore took a character who would just basically been like a swamp monster, and then just completely redefined his origin without disregarding anything of the past, and took him to a whole new level of existence, and basically invented mature readers comics, or mature readers superhero comics as well. Because basically everything he does here, it's a foundation for just about a lot of the stuff you're going to be hearing about later on. It's like on my list, specifically all the stuff that DC Vertigo has put out over the years. But it's like, aside from its place in history, and it's like I said, its transformative effect on comics, it gets a spot on my list. It would get a spot on my list solely because of the fact that these are some of the scariest comics I have ever read. Some of this just the creepiest, skin crawling bits, literally when Abby Arcane has to scratch her skin off because she's realized she's been sleeping with her husband, who has been possessed by the soul of her evil dad, Anton Arcane. Creepy shit like that. Yeah. But yes, and it's because a lot of comics, even though a lot of horror comics just generally don't scare me. A lot of Hellblazer, even though it's purportedly a horror comic, just doesn't get under my skin in any meaningful way. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing does, and that's even if if it wasn't for Moore's insightful revision of the Swamp Thing character, his really clever takes on integrating it into the DC universe, such as his Swamp Thing's take his takeover of Gotham City and Batman's rationalized approach to getting the guy out of there. I mean, bits like that are great, but it's the scariness. It's really the scariness of it, the creepiness, just the gets under your skin bit that really does it for me. And also there's also one bit in here that that has been lifted a lot by Garth Ennis in particular. That's the bit how they when Swamp Thing goes to Gotham City, and all the people who sympathize with Swamp Thing are called the Swampies. And at one point, a TV announcer says, "Who are these Swampies, and what shadowy compulsions motivate them?" Ennis has lifted that bit for 2 series, he's done, and Preacher and and his initial run on Punisher. But really, it's his second run on Punisher, which brings us to my number 10. See, my number 10 on the list is his run on Punisher Max. Now, much as I love his Marvel Knights version of Punisher, which gave us the great Welcome Back, Frank, and turned Punisher into a great comedic romp throughout the Marvel universe. Punisher Max basically is a dark, pitiless crime comic that stands as the best thing I've read from Marvel. Period. And it basically takes some the Punisher just out of the realm of superheroes and into almost pure crime comics right here. I mean, a lot of it means a lot of this stuff is. I mean, yes, Frank Castle in this series is kind of like a ultra prepared, ultra competent killing machine, and he's not going to die because he's the main character. But Ennis still uses that framework to tell lots of interesting stories, from his take on the Troubles in Ireland and Kitchen Irish to the to modern day slavery and the slavers, even dark black comedy and the characters take on modern day on modern day energy companies like Enron in Barracuda. It's like, and also like things about the character himself, such as what happens when the Punisher like actually finds out he does have a kid, and what choices does he have to live with in it's like in Long Cold Dark. It's all of these series like are, and even then it's like you've got things like Man of Stone, which is a great epic action story where Ennis takes a lot of the characters he's created for this run and brings their fate to their ultimate conclusion. It's great, compelling stuff, and easily one of the runs like that I basically loan out like whenever I get whenever I hook a friend of mine into reading comics. Yeah. So, but it still isn't quite the greatest superhero comic ever read. Ever written, and that undergoes to my number 9 choice, and that would be The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller, and of course Klaus Janson and Lynn Varley. But because the thing is that even though Miller's reputation has really soured over the years with his disappointing return to the Dark Knight Strikes Again wasn't necessarily, I'd say, a terrible comic. It, however, was a terrible sequel. And I haven't read All-Star Batman and Robin, which I can't really. So I'm willing to shell out money for something that I've heard is like intentionally terrible. And as I said before, Holy Terror was just really like a disappointing misfire. But The Dark Knight Returns, even 20 years, almost 25 years from its initial publication, it still stands as a towering work, and easily one of the definitive takes on Batman. Because years later, even after say runs by Greg Rucka, Ed Brubaker, and Grant Morrison's paradigm changing run, it's like you still look at The Dark Knight Returns and it still strikes you as this is how Batman is going to end up. Like eventually he's going to stop, but then he's going to realize he can't. He's got to come back and fix things. But his obsessions, his drive, it's going to be it's ultimately going to be his undoing in the end. It's like it's a great tale of a superhero whose compulsion gets the best of him and drives. It's like and ultimately dooms him in the end. But the thing is, like for me though, it's like Watchmen, its spiritual counterpart, is basically the Citizen Kane of comics. It's like the story that is a great shorthand for the greatest comic ever written, even though it still remains a compelling story, even though a lot of its innovations have been eaten up and done better by subsequent comics over the years. The Dark Knight Returns is comics Godfather. The film where you've seen it, where you've heard so much about how good it is, and then when you finally watch it, you realize, yeah, it really is as good as its hype. So it's a fantastic story, but it's like as far as we're talking about great definitive 80s works by comics creators. My next pick, number 8, this goes to Alan Moore's V for Vendetta, hands down his best work. And even though it's like the movie was pretty much kind of crap, and especially for the fact that it invented a romance between the two main characters. Moore's story of a fascist society who's pitted against an immensely competent and imaginative anarchist to restore, who's determined to restore humanity's control to the control of humanity, say, to the people themselves. It still remains a compelling morality tale, even especially in our present day, as these masses become a symbol for the Occupy movement, as well as the anonymous hacker collective. It's still a compelling story of what happens when we let our fate be decided by Big Brother, as well as what we can do. What can be done in order to get our ultimate fate back? Something you want to add?
No.
Okay, sorry.
Everything's cool.
Okay, I just heard
Pay
stuff
no
in the back.
attention to the man behind the curtain.
Okay, all right. Now that being said, number 7 on my list is probably one of those cases where you look at everything else on my list and it goes, one of these things is not like the other. And that would definitely be the case for number 7, which is A Box Office Poison by Alex Robinson. Now, the series gets its name because Robinson's story is basically a story of like a lot of several 20-somethings living in New York and just like struggling to get by. Real slice of life story, and just like the kind of character driven story that doesn't involve explosions or actions or any kind of science fiction or fantasy that would be best described as box office poison. But as often is the case with some of these stories that are categorized as that, it's like they still wind up being immensely special. It's like and they wind up speaking to a particular audience. And this actually still speaks to me because years later, after buying this at Comic-Con years ago, I remember it was the last comic I read when I was going through all my stuff that year, and it wound up and it holds a special place in my heart, if only for the fact that it was the best comic that I read. So it really was saving the best for last. But just the way Robinson gets described as his characters, like Sherman, the aspiring writer who's stuck in a dead end job, his girlfriend Dorothy Lestrade, who is bad news from the very very beginning. It's like, and Jane, the aspiring comics artist, who actually has series one good relationship with her husband Stephen Gaydale, who bears a striking resemblance to Peter Steele, the late great lead singer and bassist for Typo Negative, and it's like Ann Velasquez, who is basically kind of like the reader's point of view character for being like the big comic book nerd and aspiring comic book artist. It's a story of their struggles, their relationships, throughout the throughout this particular time in the mid, it's like in late to mid 90s, and it's also a compelling story about comic book creators' rights as well, as Ed winds up being, as one of the main plot threads of the story, basically involves Ed meeting up with one of the key creators of the Golden Age, in the world of box office poison, and basically trying to find a way for him to get recognition for the iconic superhero he created, the Night Stalker. I can read, even though it's purely character driven and it's like miles away from a lot of the stuff I normally talk about on the site, it's still something that I can read over and over again and still pick up on different nuances, different aspects of the characterization, and just seeing how each character's story, how their action, like how their personalities drive them to make really bad decisions in completely logical ways. It's a fantastic story. And more than anything else, when they talk about alternative comics and stuff that's really outside the mainstream, this kind of justifies why it's even if I don't talk about it, it's I'll still keep buying that stuff. It's just, to be honest, it's really hard to write up that stuff because I feel like I deserves more intellectual approach than I'm willing to. That I'm willing to employ when I'm not just talking like this. But I think I'm really embarrassing myself at this point. So we're moving on to another series that has actually only gained in relevance over the last couple of years, and that would be Eagle, the Making of an Asian American President by Kaiji Kawaguchi. Now it's a story. It's a story of Kenneth Yamaoka, a second generation Asian American who's basically tries to become the Democratic nominee for president in the 2000 election. Now, really, it's this is, like I said, at the time this was written, this was still kind of like a feasible idea, but essentially it pits him against imaginary versions of Al Gore and Bill Clinton, and even Buzz Aldrin for the no, it's not Buzz Aldrin. John Glenn for the Democratic nomination. It's like I said, it's a fascinating take on American politics viewed from an American outsider, and even it does have some certain tropes for manga. It's still still an absolutely compelling read, and it's still, and a lot of the stuff still rings true. It's like all like years on from today. I mean, to be honest, like reading this back during the 2008 elections, it becomes even more relevant when you got the picture of the ethnic Democratic upstart taking on the established old school Republican war veteran. Like I said, you can almost like perfectly graft Obama versus McCain onto the story, and it still wouldn't lose a step. But it's also a compelling story of a son getting to know his father as Yamaoka brings his illegitimate son Takashi on to cover his campaign. And then there's also all sorts of political backdoor double dealing and drama. Like, it's great. Like, it's all compelling stuff, and it's also what I think is ultimately probably the best cliffhanger I've read in modern comics, because it takes such an unlikely source, like Yamaoka being perceived as a flip-flopper, and then it makes you wait from volume 2 to volume 3 to figure out how is he going to prove that he's not a flip-flopper. So that's great stuff, and it also benefits immensely from Carl Gustav Horn, the greatest and best localizer. It's like working in the industry today. This is one of his works before he left Viz for Dark Horse, and he makes the English adaptations sing perfectly. Yeah. However, speaking of English adaptations, there's also another series that has also taken given special care when it was adapted into English, and it is also the other ongoing series that on my list. And if you, like I said, Saga Yojimbo was one, and like I said, if you can't guess that number 5 for me was Blade of the Immortal, then you need to guess harder. You need to listen to me more, I guess, or something like that. But like I said, anyone who's read this knows that this series is going to be on here, because even though it's still ongoing, even though the ending is yet to be written in stone, at this point, creator Hiroaki Summer would have to actually actively work to destroy what he has written so far, and in order to get this off my list. I certainly hope he won't do that, but everything I've been reading from him so far, as the series enters its effective 4th act, shows that he's got a plan, and he's following it up to the very end. But Blade of the Immortal, like I said, the short version is the story of a girl, Rin, trying to avenge her family's death at the hands of the Maverick Samurai faction and the immortal samurai she teams up with in order to achieve it. But then Samurai introduces all these moral complications into her quest, such as like what happens when she realizes that her battle approach is completely out of line with what her father taught. What happened? What happens when she tries to elicit an apology from her, from one of her tormentors, from one of her family's killers, instead of just killing him outright. It's a series filled with fascinating, complex characters, and some of the hands down some of the best fight scenes I've ever seen in comics. Period. Even when the series is kind of not so hot, when in the prison arc, which stretches from volumes 15 through 21, it's still better than a lot of other creators' best efforts. And and that said, I am still I'm still all about waiting for when the next volume is, because even like I said, as good as this series is, as good as 20th Century Boys is, I'm always waiting for when's the next volume of Blade of the Immortal? When's the next volume of Blade of the Immortal? Like I said, I anticipate this series more than anything else, and so should you. And that said, moving on, like I said, these next 3 series are basically kind of like a lot. It sounds like a little foundation of why I like Vertigo, and why a lot of times I feel that a character, an artist, a creator, really does have to have a lot of my favorite creators have great Vertigo series like to their name, and that's what causes me to go out and buy more of their stuff. Creators like Brian K. Vaughan, Neil Gaiman, Warren Ellis, and my choice number 4, Garth Ennis with Preacher. Preacher is a story of Jesse Custer, a former Texas preacher, his gun-toting girlfriend Tulip, and an Irish vampire Cassidy, who go on a road trip looking for God. And no, I'm not talking in the figurative sense. They are looking for God, period, because he has abandoned his roost in his place in heaven and is now wandering the earth in order to gain the love of the half angelic, half demonic creature that inhabits Jesse's body and gives him the power called the Word of God, which allows him to like people to obey every word he says. But it's not. Even though there's some interesting philosophical questions about God's role and the role of faith in the modern era. That's largely bunked, and it's very as you read more of his stuff, you realize he's anti-organized religion, and probably and definitely very much an atheist. But a lot of the stuff he does right here, it's like with Preacher, it's like it's still gripping, compelling storytelling, such as when Jesse comes face to face with his God-fearing family, and how they want to bring him back in the fold through any means possible, and All in the Family, like as seen in volume 2, or the efforts of the Grail, the secret society that's been protecting the bloodline of Christ for all these years, and their leader, the Allfather, wants Jesse for reasons unknown. And of course, there's Harris Starr, the agent of the Grail, who's basically one of the most pathetically lovable bastards in all of comics, because even though he is truly an asshole, and he suffers more shit done to him than just about any villain I've seen, he still remains like a fascinating study as his drive to give the world the leader it deserves eventually morphs into just bitterness and hate and nihilism at the very end. But it's also got lots of immensely funny bits, such as Arseface, the guy with an arse for a face after a failed suicide attempt. And it's and also things like Jesse becoming sheriff. There's a lot of compelling, fascinating stories here that that really do stand the test of time, and really I emphasize a creator working at the top of his game here, because really Ennis has never been better when he's working with his buddy Steve Dillon, and this is a series that proves it. And also one of the reasons why I think Steve Dillon is one of the greatest artists when it comes to displaying character emotion. I mean, it's his work here is so great, so visceral. Even though doesn't have the greatest detail, even though he's not great at drawing fantasy, the emotion he invests in his characters will draw you in no matter what. Speaking of creators working at the top of their game, that also rings true of Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson's Transmetropolitan. And I'll be honest with you. The main reason this gets the nod over, there are two reasons this gets the nod over the Preacher. One, because ultimately I'm a science fiction nerd more than I am just anything else. But also because Transmetropolitan really captures the essence of what the future is going to be like. And you've got crazy things like people becoming nanomachine colonies, 750 billions of channels, showing all sorts of TV, religions springing up, new religions being invented by the minute, new technologies such as bacterial tracks to replace your stomach. I mean, you look at it, but even then, it's a lot of this stuff isn't treated with awe or reverence. It's basically, this is basically the future. I mean, there's crazy new stuff being invented all the time, and that's That's the way it is. At the core of it is Spider Jerusalem, Gonzo journalist, brought back down from the mountain that he retreated to in order to pay off his publishing debt. And even though it's like I've read some reviews that talk about how his efforts to bring down the newly elected president of the United States does kind of like is a bit does bring a bit heavy-handed and obvious. Living through the Bush years and seeing like Spider's efforts to take down the president and what the president's been doing as far as eviscerating the Constitution, living through the Bush years makes you realize that Transmetropolitan was more prescient and of the time, like, than anything else I was reading. Like I said, Ellis has written lots of great comics over the years, and like some bad and boring ones as well. But if you want to know why I describe myself as an Ellis completist, Transmetropolitan is the reason above all others. But it's still not DC Vertigo's crowning jewel. And now that I've said that, you will probably guess what my number 2 series is. That is The Sandman by Neil Gaiman and a host of immensely talented artists. That Gaiman's story of the Sandman is a story of dream of the endless, 7 beings who comprise the essential points of view of human nature. And tells the story of how Dream escapes from captivity at human hands, and then tries to resume his duties among the waking world. And it basically leads him to conventional things like facing off with a supervillain for control of his gem, rounding up the escaped entities from the dream realm, facing off with Lucifer, the Lucifer, over the fate, for one of his artifacts of power, and then having Lucifer repay the favor by giving him the key to hell after he abdicates it. But the series is really it's a series about stories and just the simple awe that they invoke. I mean, it's like even like Gaiman's stories, like I said, even though they have the ring of art to them, that they stand above. Even though it would seem that they stand above standard genre tropes, he still they ultimately do embrace them, such as what happens when Dream is faced with all the different people who are trying to figure out who deserves the key to hell, and then his ultimate clever resolution, which is in volume 4, Season of Mists, probably one of my favorite volumes, and and just seeing the different stories that Gaiman spins, whether they're ones based in reality, such as the story of the Emperor of the United States, or I'm talking about Augustus Caesar, who's trying to figure out how to plot the course of his empire after upon his death. Or the story of one man who wanders into the dream of the city, and then Liz starts living apart from them after realizes what happens when the cities wake and rise. They're great stories, and it's also fascinating to realize that Gaiman really had Dream's ultimate fate planned out from the very beginning, because you can see what happens to him as the series goes on, but then you realize that it's sad that you can be sad about what was done to him in the end, but then you look back and realize that he ultimately did it to himself intentionally, because that's what he wanted. And the series is about changing or dying, and that's and the stories that it provokes as a result. It was also succeeded by a spin-off series, Lucifer, written by Mike Carey, which is really one of the which is a series that best defines from being from the realm of better than it has any right to be. Because while all the new Watchmen series, just aren't going to smell right by any mile, just because Moore has nothing to do with them at all, and there's really no one who can possibly do a Watchmen prequel or sequel justice aside from him. Gaiman gave his blessing to Lucifer, and reading this, and I wouldn't have read the series otherwise, and seeing the end result of that, I'm glad he did. But still, it's not the greatest series of all time that I've read, and that honor goes to a manga. It also goes to a manga written by a man who really who, after reading this, like I realize has more. It's a crime to have as much talent as this man has, because not only is Hayao Miyazaki one of the greatest, he's the greatest living animation director of animation of our time. He's also written the greatest comic book I have ever written in the form of Nausicaa, The Valley of Wind. Now, don't get me wrong. The movie itself is a classic, and the first film of his that I saw that really got me onto his style. Then you read his manga, and there's so much more to it. This basically hits all the great sweet spots I like. It's science. It's a lot science fiction. It's a little fantasy. It's got a story of the post-apocalypse, and it's got like a host of memorable characters from Nausicaa herself, who wants to try and save the world, but also has empathy for everyone, as well as the great rage and anger as well. It's like in her heart as well. Her mentor, Yupa, who in any other story, this greatest swordsman of the periphery would have been the main character. But here, instead, he's just a supporting actor, guiding people on to their fate, to their ultimate fates. Or Kushana, the daughter of the Tormekian princess, who commits very violent, heinous acts over the course of the series, but also ultimately finds redemption and her place in the world at the very end. As is her father, the emperor, who has a very interesting place in the way that he is out for power, but in the end winds up being the catalyst that helps save Nausicaa from the ultimate fate of the people who want to save and who want to quote unquote save the world by restoring purity without any consequence to what that word actually means. It's one of the most like I said, the reason I am saying this list is basically stuff that my pick for the greatest series is this is stuff that speaks to me, and Nausicaa, more than any other series I've read, basically speaks to me gets inside my head, gets inside my heart, and basically says this is one of the greatest series I've ever. This is the greatest series I've ever read, and there's so much character nuance, so much fantastic art. Just looking at Miyazaki's series, art and detail, it's you hardly see this kind of detail in any American or Japanese comic. I mean, from the art down to the story, it just feels that it was the man was just he knew exactly what story he wanted to tell in his head, and he had no problem getting it out of his head onto paper. Yeah, and as anyone who's read the series, I will see. And also, that being said, though, now John, you see, there's a reason I got that for you as a Christmas gift all those years ago.
That's right.
Yeah, but that brings us to the end, and like I said, it's me talking about the stuff that I love more than anything else, and it's the foundation for what I consider good comics. That being said, let me leave you with a little bonus thing, because I'm not going to talk about the worst comic I've ever read, because I don't want to dwell too long on that. I mean, some of the stuff that sticks with me, Ghost in the Shell, Man-Machine Interface, or Gunsmith Cat's Burst. I mean, yeah, they're terrible, but they don't entirely the soul-crushingly bad bad stuff that just makes me wish I could erase reading this from my mind. But let me tell you about a series called Wounded Man by Kazuo Koike and Ryoichi Ikegami, which basically gets my vote as the worst comic I've ever read, because it's basically a Japanese male machismo run completely amok, and it's utterly poisonous to anyone with two X chromosomes, and also because just about anyone who reads it, male or female, it will put hair on your chest. It's this tale of a manly man fighting for revenge against God's pornographic X-rated films. It's it is a spectacularly. I can't say it's really quantifies as a good comic by any means, but it is fascinatingly awful in its ways that shows it just like what Japanese men consider like their ultimate goals in the world.
It's the equivalent of a train wreck.
Yes, it is a glorious train wreck, and like I said, it's kind of like I talked about how Future Diary like is kind of like entertaining in the same way, but no, Wounded Man is truly like a glorious train wreck. Just like train if it doesn't go off the rails and explode, there is a mushroom cloud left from the wreckage it leaves us. Yeah, and as I guess as I'm leaving you on that note, like I said, that's my top. These two podcasts are my top 20 comics of all time, and we will go ahead and resume normal service 2 weeks from now. What will I be talking about then? Well, now I've got this off my chest. Your guess is as good as mine. Yeah. So all I can say is, everyone, thanks for sticking with me this long, and hey, here's hoping for another 100 podcasts from here on out.
All right, you got it.
Yep. I'm Jason Glick. I'm your host. It's John Murphy, your co-host. Yep. So everyone, you have a good night. And take it easy. I'll see you in 2 weeks.
We'll see you later. Bye.